He wants the best for us. God has a plan and a purpose. God has other purposes in mind involving just a point A and point B. He wants to conform you like Christ. Romans 8:28 and 29, we know this. It tells us that God is actively working in our lives to accomplish His will to conform us to the image of Christ. He loves us, and we can know that He has our best in mind. So like the Israelites, He may direct us to get out of our comfort zone, to lead us that may not make sense to us, like the way of the Philistines made sense to the people of Israel at the time. Even though it was the easiest, even though it was near. And this goes against our flesh. It's something that we have to deal with continually. Warren Wiersbe said again, if you permit the Lord to direct your steps, like Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 say, expect to be led occasionally on paths that may seem unnecessary, long, and hard. So following God takes time because He wants us to mature. It goes against the natural pattern of the flesh, a desire to be quick and easy. But remember, God is our shepherd. He guides, He loves, He cares. Psalm 23:3 says He leads us in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. And so this is where we get the idea where the Lord works in mysterious ways. Because sometimes when He leads us during a harder path, an unusual route, it doesn't make sense to us. But we know that God, we could trust God. He's sovereign. He has a plan and purpose that cannot be thwarted, and nothing is by surprise. His ways are higher than our ways, Isaiah 55 says. They're great. He has greater thoughts than our thoughts. And so we need to trust Him. We need to trust Him. And this is why verse 17 and 18 goes on to say that God led them around the way of the Philistines because He knew what was best for them. And it says that it was because it was for the people's good, lest the people change their minds and they go back and want to go back to Egypt. You know, later on in the journey of Exodus, once they actually did reach Canaan and saw how big the enemies were, they called them giants, like we're like grasshoppers to these giants. They actually said in Numbers 14:4, let's appoint another leader and go back to Egypt. God knew their weaknesses. He knew what was best for them, so He led them to a harder way so they would develop and they would grow. And He does the same thing for me and you. It's not a punishment that He leads you in an unusual way or it's hard. As a church leader, it's crazy the stuff that God leads you in, and you have no idea why, and when you're just so frustrating. But know that He is good, and He has a plan, and He has a purpose. And it may not be the easiest thing physically or even spiritually to do sometimes as a leader, but it actually is important. It's His guiding. He leads us in unusual ways. And this unusual way is known as the desert or the wilderness. Did you notice that? Verse 18 says, God led the people around by the way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. Now, what a weird thing to think about, God leading people to a wilderness toward the Dead Sea. A dead end, the Red Sea. But we know this was the place right where He wanted them to be. He wanted them to be dependent on Him and to do another mighty work in their life. You see, in order for us to see miracles, we actually have to have a situation where we need a miracle and God to move. And He wants to blow our minds. He wants to be in worship. This principle is still true today. God leads us through desert seasons, wilderness, dark nights of our soul, places of great discomfort and even isolation to allow His Spirit to work in our lives. Yes, it's an unusual way. He'll actually lead you as a church leader to be sanctified through the ministry. Because He's that good. He knows He's going to bring those problem people in your life. He's going to do all this stuff because He knows it's best for us. And as you often talk to people that go through hard times, desert times, wilderness times, things that don't make sense, they talk about how important it is for their own maturity and how close the Lord, as their shepherd, was in the midst of that trial or that situation. They had deep intimacy and grew to another level of maturity.